My name is Emma. I'm 29 years old. I never thought I'd experience the sting of my mother's hand across my face at this age. Yet there I stood in my parents' living room, my cheek burning not just from the slap, but from the humiliation. All because I refused to pay $300 for my sister Kate's extravagant birthday party. The sister who's looked down on me for years while my parents cheered her on. That slap changed everything. If you're watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you're from, hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever been treated unfairly by family. Now let me tell you how a simple no led to the moment that finally opened my eyes. I grew up in a modest middle-class home in the suburbs of Chicago. Our family looked normal from the outside: mom, dad, and 2 daughters. My mother Linda worked as an office manager at a local dental practice, while my father Robert was an accountant at a mid-sized firm. My sister Kate is 3 years younger than me, and from the beginning the dynamics in our household were clear. Kate was the family favorite. It wasn't something anyone explicitly stated, but it was evident in 1,000 small ways that accumulated over the years. She was prettier, more outgoing, and resembled my mother with her delicate features and natural blonde hair. I, on the other hand, was more studious, practical, and took after my father's side of the family with brown hair and a sturdier build. Kate's going to be a heartbreaker someday, relatives would say, while I would get comments like, "Emma's the smart one." It seemed harmless enough when we were little, but the labels stuck and shaped how my parents treated us. When Kate showed interest in dance lessons at age 6, my parents immediately signed her up for the most expensive studio in our area. When I asked for science camp that same year, my mother sighed about the cost and suggested the free library program instead. When Kate needed a new dress for each school dance, it was a given. When I needed new books for my advanced classes, I was told to check them out from the library or buy used copies. By the time I was 16, I had started working part-time at a local grocery store to pay for things my parents wouldn't. My first paycheck went toward a graphing calculator for my AP Calculus class. Kate never worked during high school. She was too busy with activities and needed to focus on being a teenager. Meanwhile, I was juggling honors classes, work, and the school newspaper. College made the contrast even starker. I received minimal financial help from my parents while pursuing my nursing degree. I took out loans, worked nearly full-time at a care facility, and lived in a cramped apartment with 3 roommates to make ends meet. Kate, on the other hand, had her tuition fully covered at a private college, lived in a nice apartment that our parents subsidized, and received a monthly allowance, so she wouldn't have to work during these important years. Kate majored in communications, but never settled into a traditional career after graduation. Instead, she decided to become an influencer, posting stylish photos on social media and attempting to build a personal brand. My parents thought this was brilliant and modern. "She's an entrepreneur," my mother would say proudly, while my father nodded in agreement. Meanwhile, my practical choice to become a nurse was met with lukewarm approval. "It's stable," my mother would say, as if stability were some sort of consolation prize rather than a virtue. "But it's such demanding work, Emma, and the hours are so irregular." Whenever I tried to bring up the disparities in how we were treated, my concerns were dismissed. "You're just different people with different needs," my father would say. Or my mother would sigh and say, "Emma, don't be jealous of your sister. It's not attractive." So I learned to stop mentioning it. I focused on building my own life, determined to succeed through hard work and perseverance, even without the support my sister took for granted. After graduating with my nursing degree, I threw myself into my career. While Kate was posting glamour shots from brunches and beach vacations, I was working night shifts and gaining valuable experience. It wasn't always glamorous, but it was fulfilling and I was good at it. 7 years into my career, I had worked my way up to charge nurse at one of Chicago's most prestigious hospitals. I specialized in cardiac care, and the work was challenging but rewarding. My colleagues respected me, and patients often requested me by name. I had found my place in the world, a place where my practical nature and attention to detail were strengths, not flaws to be overlooked. I had saved enough for a modest but comfortable one-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood. It wasn't luxurious, but it was mine, paid for with my own hard-earned money. I had furnished it carefully over time, choosing quality pieces that would last rather than following the latest trends. My favorite spot was my small balcony where I had created a container garden, a peaceful retreat after long shifts at the hospital. Outside of work, I had developed solid friendships with a group of other healthcare professionals who understood the demands of the job. We supported each other through difficult shifts and celebrated our successes together. These relationships were based on mutual respect and genuine caring, something I had rarely experienced within my own family. I had also started dating Michael, a respiratory therapist I met at work. He was kind, thoughtful, and appreciated my practical nature. He never made me feel like I needed to be more glamorous or exciting. "You're real," he told me once. "Do you know how rare that is?" With Michael, I never felt like I was competing for attention or validation. He saw me clearly and valued what he saw. My financial situation was stable. I lived within my means, contributed regularly to my retirement account, and even had a growing emergency fund. I took pride in being self-sufficient and never having to ask my parents for money the way Kate still did regularly. As I built this life for myself, I gradually reduced contact with my family. It wasn't a conscious decision at first, just a natural consequence of being busy with work and spending time with people who made me feel good about myself. The contrast between those interactions and family gatherings became increasingly stark. When I did see my family, the same patterns persisted. Kate would dominate conversations with stories about her latest collaboration with a small skincare brand or her growing follower count. My parents would hang on her every word, asking questions and offering encouragement. When the conversation turned to me, it was brief. "Work is fine," was usually all I managed before someone changed the subject. Kate had settled into a pattern of financial instability, disguised as an exciting lifestyle. She lived in a chic apartment that she could barely afford, wore designer clothes, and was constantly planning her next vacation, all while her actual income remained inconsistent at best. Whenever she ran short on rent or needed money for some career opportunity, my parents would step in to help. "Your sister is investing in her future," my mother explained when I once questioned why they had paid for Kate's professional photo shoot. "Her image is her business." My father was more direct. "Emma, you're doing well for yourself. Kate needs more support right now to get her career off the ground." It became an unspoken expectation that I too should help out my sister when needed. Small requests at first, covering her portion of a dinner bill or lending her money for gas that was never repaid. I usually complied to avoid conflict, telling myself it wasn't worth the argument. But as the requests grew larger and more frequent, I began to question the dynamic. Michael noticed it before I fully admitted it to myself. "They treat you like an ATM," he said after one family dinner where Kate had casually mentioned needing to borrow $300 for a website upgrade. "But they treat her like she's precious. It's not right, Emma." Deep down, I knew he was right. But years of conditioning had taught me to minimize my own feelings and needs when it came to my family. It would take something more dramatic to finally break that pattern. The catalyst came in the form of Kate's 26th birthday. Kate had always made a big deal of her birthdays, and my parents had always indulged her. But this year, she was planning something especially extravagant, a celebration at Altitude, one of Chicago's trendiest rooftop restaurants, complete with a private dining area, custom cocktails, and a professional photographer. The plans were revealed during a family dinner at my parents' house. Kate was practically glowing as she described her birthday vision. "It's going to be so amazing," she gushed, scrolling through photos on her phone to show us the venue. "They have these fire pits on the terrace with the most incredible view of the city skyline. And I've designed a special menu with the chef. It's going to be absolutely perfect for my Instagram." My mother was equally enthusiastic. "It sounds wonderful, sweetheart. Just what you deserve for your special day." "How much is all this costing?" my father asked, though his tone suggested he was merely curious rather than concerned. Well, it's an investment, Kate said, using her favorite term for spending money. The base package is $2,400, but with the extras, I want it comes to around $3,000. I nearly choked on my water. $3,000 for a birthday party seemed outrageous to me, especially given that Kate had mentioned just last week that she was waiting on several pending payments from brand deals. That's a lot, I said carefully. Kate rolled her eyes. It's standard for an event like this, Emma. Not everyone wants to celebrate with pizza and Netflix like you do. The jab stung, but it was typical of how Kate often dismissed my more practical lifestyle. Actually, we wanted to talk to you about that, my mother said, looking at me with a smile that immediately made me wary. We thought it would be nice if we all contributed to make Kate's birthday really special this year. We're covering most of it, my father added quickly, but we thought you might want to chip in $300 for the photographer. It would mean a lot to your sister. I looked at Kate, who was watching me with an expectant smile as if my contribution was a foregone conclusion. Something about her expression, the absolute certainty that I would say yes, that I existed to support her wants, made something shift inside me. I don't think I can do that, I said quietly. That's a lot of money for a party. Kate's smile faltered. Seriously, it's my birthday, Emma. I know, and I'm happy to get you a nice gift, but $300 for a photographer is more than I can spare right now. This wasn't strictly true. I could afford it, but for the first time I was questioning whether I should. You just went on that weekend trip with Michael last month, Kate pointed out accusingly. So you clearly have money to spend when you want to. That was a carefully budgeted trip that we both saved for, I explained, and it costs less than what you're asking for just one part of your birthday. It's not like you have many expenses, my mother chimed in. You don't have children, your apartment is small. I have student loans, I reminded her, which I'm still paying off on my own. Emma, my father said in his reasonable voice, the one that always preceded an attempt to make me feel guilty. Your sister would do the same for you. I bit back a laugh at that. Kate had never once offered to help me financially. In fact, she still owed me from the last 3 times she had borrowed money. I'm sorry, but I have to say no this time, I said, trying to keep my voice firm but gentle. I can contribute $50 toward the party if that would help, but $300 is too much. Kate pushed away from the table dramatically. Don't bother. If you don't want to be part of my special day, that's your choice. Of course I want to be part of your day, I protested. I just can't spend that much on a photographer. It's fine, Kate said in a tone that made it clear it was anything but fine. Some people just don't understand what's important. The rest of the dinner was tense, with Kate giving me the cold shoulder and my parents making awkward attempts at conversation. As soon as I could politely leave, I did. Michael was waiting at my apartment when I got home. One look at my face and he knew the dinner hadn't gone well. What happened? He asked, guiding me to the couch. I explained about Kate's extravagant birthday plans and the expectation that I would contribute. $300 for a photographer for a birthday party? Michael shook his head in disbelief. That's ridiculous. And why is it your responsibility to pay for any of this? Because I'm family, I said, repeating the justification I'd heard so many times. But even to my own ears it sounded hollow. Emma, Michael said gently, being family doesn't mean bankrolling someone else's extravagance, especially when that person has never done the same for you. He was right, and somewhere deep inside I knew it. But standing up to my family's expectations felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, terrifying and irreversible. Little did I know that the conversation at dinner was just the beginning of what would become the most significant conflict in my family's history. Over the next 2 weeks, the pressure to change my mind about the birthday contribution mounted. It started with texts from Kate, passive-aggressive messages about how she was adjusting her vision for the birthday since some people couldn't be supportive. Then came calls from my mother, her voice oscillating between sweet persuasion and thinly veiled disappointment. I just don't understand why you're being so difficult about this, Emma, she said during one particularly tense call. It's a special milestone for your sister. 26 isn't really a milestone birthday, Mom, I pointed out. Every birthday is special, she countered. And Kate has put so much thought into this celebration. She wants everything to be perfect. I understand that, but I still think $300 for a photographer is excessive. My mother sighed dramatically. You've always been so judgmental about how other people choose to spend their money. Not everyone has to live as austerely as you do. The conversation continued in this vein, with my mother implying that my reluctance was due to some character flaw rather than a reasonable financial boundary. By the time we hung up, I felt drained and guilty, even though logically I knew I had done nothing wrong. My father's approach was different, but equally pressuring. He left a voicemail that started friendly but quickly turned manipulative. Emma, honey, I know you work hard for your money and you're careful with it. That's admirable. But your mother is really upset about this whole birthday situation and Kate is hurt. Is this really the hill you want to die on? Is $300 worth hurting your family? The message hit all my buttons. My desire for peace, my lifelong habit of accommodating others, my fear of being the difficult one. I almost called back to relent. But something stopped me, a growing awareness that this pattern would never end unless I ended it. Meanwhile, Kate was telling her own version of events on social media. Without naming me, she posted about people who claim to be family but don't show up when it matters. She shared photos of birthday preparations with captions like, "Scaling back some dreams but still determined to celebrate authentically," as if my refusal to fund her photographer had somehow forced her into an inauthentic celebration. The irony wasn't lost on me when I scrolled past another post of hers, a casual shot of her showing off a new pair of designer shoes that couldn't have cost less than $500. The shoes had been purchased just days after our family dinner, according to the timestamp. Clearly, Kate had money to spend on her priorities. She just didn't consider paying for her own party to be one of them. That post was what finally solidified my resolve. I sent a clear text to my family group chat. I've given this a lot of thought and my answer is still no. I will not be contributing to the photographer for Kate's birthday. I'll be bringing a thoughtful gift to the party and look forward to celebrating with everyone. The response was immediate and heated. My mother called her voice tight with anger. I can't believe you're being so selfish, Emma, after everything we've done for you. What exactly have you done for me, Mom? I asked, surprising myself with the directness of the question. Because from where I'm standing, Kate has always been the priority. That is completely untrue, my mother gasped. We've always treated you girls equally. No, you haven't, I said, years of suppressed feelings finally finding voice. And I think you know that. My father's message came next. Emma, I'm really disappointed in you. This isn't how we raised you to behave. You're hurting the family with this attitude. And finally, Kate, I just wanted my birthday to be special, and you've made it all about you and your issues. You've never supported my dreams, and now you're ruining my birthday too. Thanks a lot. Each message was designed to make me second-guess myself, to nudge me back into the compliant role I had played for so long. But something had shifted. I showed the messages to Michael, half expecting him to suggest I give in for the sake of peace. Instead, he grew angry on my behalf. This is emotional manipulation, Emma. They're trying to make you responsible for everyone's feelings while completely dismissing yours. My friend Sarah, a psychiatric nurse I worked with, was even more blunt when I shared the situation. That's some classic dysfunctional family dynamics right there. Your sister is the golden child, and you're expected to enable her. It's not healthy, and you're right to set boundaries. Their validation gave me strength. For the first time, I saw the situation through outside eyes, and what I saw wasn't pretty. I was being used, had been used for years, and it was time for that to stop. Still, as the day of the pre-party family gathering approached, my anxiety mounted. Setting boundaries through text was one thing. Facing my family in person would be another challenge entirely. I knew there would be tension, possibly even confrontation. What I didn't expect was how dramatically things would escalate. The day of the family gathering before Kate's big party arrived with a sense of foreboding. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon, but I felt a storm brewing as I drove to my parents' house. Michael had offered to come with me for moral support, but I had declined. This was something I needed to face on my own. My parents' house looked the same as always. Neat brick exterior, carefully tended flower beds, welcome mat that had been changed seasonally for as long as I could remember. But as I walked up the familiar path, I felt like a stranger approaching unknown territory. Kate's car was already in the driveway, a leased luxury model she could barely afford but insisted was necessary for her personal brand. I took a deep breath and rang the doorbell, something I rarely did at my childhood home, but which now felt appropriate given my new sense of distance. My father answered, his smile a little too bright. "Emma, come in, come in. Everyone's in the living room." The forced normality was unsettling. As I entered the living room, I saw my mother arranging a vegetable tray while Kate lounged on the sofa scrolling through her phone. She looked up when I entered, offering a cool nod, before returning to her screen. "Emma, would you help me in the kitchen?" My mother called her tone, suggesting this was a normal family gathering rather than the culmination of 2 weeks of tension. I followed her, bracing myself for whatever was coming. But she simply handed me a stack of plates and asked me to set the table, chatting about the weather and a neighbor's new landscaping, as if nothing were amiss. The strategic avoidance of conflict was familiar, a family specialty. When we returned to the living room, Kate was showing our father something on her phone, both of them laughing. She was wearing a new outfit I hadn't seen before, an expensive-looking jumpsuit with statement jewelry that probably cost more than my entire outfit. "Don't you look lovely, Kate?" my mother gushed. "That color is perfect on you." "Thanks, Mom," Kate preened. "It's part of my birthday week wardrobe. I have different looks planned for each celebration." I settled into an armchair, accepting the glass of iced tea my father offered. For a while we maintained the charade of normalcy, discussing safe topics like an upcoming family friend's wedding and my cousin's new baby. Kate dominated the conversation as usual, with my parents providing an appreciative audience. I contributed occasionally, playing my assigned role out of habit. Then my mother brought up the birthday party. "Everything's coming together beautifully for tomorrow," she said. "The restaurant called to confirm all the details. They're setting up the private area exactly as Kate envisioned." "I can't wait," Kate said, her excitement seemingly genuine. "The forecast is perfect too. Clear skies for sunset photos on the terrace." "About those photos?" my father said, glancing at me. "We went ahead and booked the photographer Kate wanted. Top-notch professional portfolio full of celebrity events." There was an expectant pause, and I realized this was it, the moment they had been building toward. They were telling me they had already covered my share, expecting me to offer reimbursement now that it was a done deal. Kate looked at me with a triumphant little smile, clearly expecting me to fold under this new pressure. I took a sip of my tea, buying myself a moment to steady my voice. "That's great that you found a good photographer," I said carefully. "I'm sure the photos will be beautiful." Another pause. My mother cleared her throat. "Well, as we discussed, we thought you might want to contribute to that part of the celebration." "I already told you I can't do that," I said, keeping my voice calm. "But I'm happy to help in other ways. I could assist with setup tomorrow, or help coordinate with the restaurant if needed." Kate scoffed. "We don't need your help with organization, Emma. The professionals have it handled." "Then I'll look forward to celebrating with everyone tomorrow," I said. "I have a nice gift for you, Kate." My mother's smile tightened. "Emma, your father and I have already paid the photographer in full. We covered your portion as well, assuming you'd reimburse us. It's $300. And there it was, the assumption that despite my clear refusal, I would eventually give in, that my boundaries weren't real, my no, not final. "I'm sorry, but as I've already said several times, I'm not comfortable contributing that amount to the photographer," I said, feeling my heart rate increase but keeping my voice steady. "I never agreed to that expense." After all we've done for you, my mother said, her voice rising slightly, this is how you repay us, by refusing to help make your sister's day special. The familiar guilt trip washed over me, but this time, instead of drowning in it, I felt a surge of clarity. This was my moment to either fall back into old patterns or finally stand my ground. What exactly have you done for me? I asked, echoing the question from our phone conversation, but now looking directly into my mother's eyes. You paid for Kate's college in full while I took out loans I'm still paying off. You funded her apartment while I worked 2 jobs to afford a place with roommates. You support her influencer dreams while you dismissed my nursing career as merely stable. So please tell me what I'm failing to repay. The room fell silent. Kate's mouth actually dropped open. I had never spoken this directly before. That's completely different, my mother sputtered. Kate has different needs. Yes, because Kate's needs have always mattered more than mine, I said, surprised by how calm I felt. I've accepted that reality and built my own life anyway. I'm doing well, no thanks to the unequal treatment in this family. But that doesn't mean I'm going to fund an extravagant party that Kate could scale back if she really couldn't afford it. Kate's eyes filled with tears, her go-to response when confronted. How can you be so cruel? It's my birthday, Emma. Do you hate me that much? I don't hate you at all, Kate, I said honestly. But I'm tired of being treated like an ATM by this family while being made to feel like I don't matter as much as you do. That's enough, my mother said sharply. She had risen from her seat, her face flushed with anger. I will not have you speaking this way in my house, Emma. You've always been jealous of your sister, always competing for attention. It's so unattractive. It's not jealousy to want to be treated with equal consideration, I said, standing as well. And it's not competition to point out a lifetime of double standards. You ungrateful girl, my mother hissed, and before I could react, her hand flew out and struck my cheek with a sharp slap. You deserve this slap. After everything we've done, after all the opportunities you've had to speak to us this way. The sting of the slap was shocking, but even more shocking was the realization that this physical blow was merely an extension of the emotional ones I'd been receiving for years. My father half rose from his seat, but then sank back down, looking away. Kate's tears had stopped, replaced by a wide-eyed stare. I touched my cheek, feeling the heat where my mother's hand had landed. In that moment, something crystallized within me, a certainty that I would never allow myself to be treated this way again. Goodbye, I said simply, picking up my purse from where I had set it on the floor. I won't be at the party tomorrow, Kate. I hope you enjoy your celebration. Emma, wait. My father finally spoke, his voice faltering. Your mother didn't mean to. Let's all calm down and talk about this. There's nothing left to talk about, I said. I've spent years being calm while being treated as less than. I'm done with that now. Kate had switched tactics, moving from tears to placation. Emma, please don't go. I'm sorry things got heated. We all say things we don't mean when we're upset. The problem is, I think Mom meant exactly what she said, I replied. And her slap conveyed what words couldn't. I'm not welcome here unless I play by the established rules, and I can't do that anymore. My mother had turned away, arms crossed, clearly expecting that someone would convince me to stay, that this scene would end with my apology and capitulation, as all our conflicts had before. But as I walked to the door, no one followed. No one called out. And strangely, with each step I took, I felt lighter, as if I were leaving behind not just that house, but the weight of expectations and inequality I had carried for so long. The sound of the door closing behind me was both an ending and a beginning. I drove home in tears, my cheek still stinging from my mother's slap, but it wasn't just physical pain I was feeling. Years of suppressed hurt were finally finding release. By the time I pulled into the parking lot of my apartment building, my face was streaked with mascara and my throat was raw. I sat in my car for several minutes trying to compose myself before going inside. My phone had been buzzing continuously. Text messages from my father asking me to come back from Kate, alternating between anger and pleading, even one from my mother that simply said, I hope you're satisfied with the scene you caused. Finally, I called the one person I knew would understand. Michael answered on the first ring. Emma, how did it go? She slapped me, I said, my voice breaking. My mom actually slapped me because I wouldn't pay for Kate's photographer. What? The shock and anger in Michael's voice were palpable. Are you okay? Do you want me to come over? Part of me wanted to say yes to have him hold me while I cried. But another part, a stronger part, needed to process this alone first. Not right now, I said. I need some time to think. But knowing you're there means everything. After hanging up, I finally went inside. My apartment welcomed me with its familiar comfort, the soft throw blanket on my couch, the gentle gurgle of my aquarium, the scent of the lavender plant on my windowsill. This space created entirely by me felt more like home than my parents' house ever had. I washed my face, changed into comfortable clothes, and made a cup of tea. Then I sat on my small balcony, watching the evening light change over the city. My phone continued to buzz, but I ignored it, giving myself permission to disconnect from the chaos. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in over a year. I needed a day to regroup to figure out what came next. My supervisor, knowing my reliability, didn't question it. Later that day, I met with my friend Diane, a therapist I knew through the hospital. We weren't close enough for her to be my actual therapist, but she had always been a wise sounding board. What happened yesterday wasn't really about $300, she said, as we sat in a quiet corner of a cafe far from my parents' neighborhood. That was just the trigger for something that's been building for years. I know, I agreed. It's about the pattern, about always being expected to give, while Kate always gets to take. Family dynamics are powerful, Diane said. We learn our roles early, and breaking out of them takes tremendous courage. What you did yesterday was stand up not just against a financial request, but against your assigned role in the family system. And my mother's response was to literally try to slap me back into place. I said, the realization bringing fresh tears to my eyes. Exactly, Diane nodded. When long-standing dynamics are threatened, the response can be intense. People will fight hard to maintain the status quo even when it's dysfunctional. That evening, I took Diane's advice and started writing down instances of unequal treatment from throughout my life. The list grew longer and longer. Birthday celebrations where Kate received elaborate parties while mine were afterthoughts, holidays where her gifts were numerous and expensive, while mine were practical, and few emotional support lavished on her smallest achievements while my major ones went unacknowledged. Seeing it all laid out was both painful and clarifying. This wasn't about one birthday party or $300. It was about a lifetime of being treated as less valuable, less deserving. My phone continued to buzz with messages. Kate had posted on social media about family drama overshadowing her special day, without naming names, positioning herself as the victim. Several relatives had reached out, urging me to apologize and make things right, for the family's sake. No one I noticed was suggesting that my mother apologize for slapping her adult daughter. No one was questioning why Kate's birthday needed a $3,000 celebration in the first place. The expectation, as always, was that I would adjust, accommodate, make peace. But something had shifted inside me. The slap had accomplished what years of subtle discrimination hadn't. It had made the family dynamics so glaringly obvious that I could no longer ignore them or rationalize them away. My mother's hand against my cheek had drawn a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I decided to take a break from contact with my family. I didn't announce it dramatically or issue ultimatums. I simply stopped responding to the barrage of messages and calls. Instead, I focused on my work, my relationship with Michael, and the friendships that had always supported me. To my surprise, several friends shared similar stories when I confided what had happened. My brother was always my parents' favorite, my colleague Jennifer told me over lunch. Nothing I did was ever good enough. I had to move 2 states away before I could breathe freely. My mother still compares me to my successful sister, another friend admitted. I've had to limit our conversations to once a month for my own sanity. Their stories reminded me that I wasn't alone, that family dysfunction wasn't something I had to silently endure. There were other possibilities, other ways of relating. Setting boundaries wasn't selfish, it was necessary for emotional health. The guilt came in waves, of course. Years of conditioning had taught me that family harmony was my responsibility, that rocking the boat was unforgivable. But with each day that passed, with each supportive conversation with Michael or friends, the guilt receded a little more, replaced by a growing sense of self-worth. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm, Michael told me one evening as we cooked dinner together in my kitchen. Not even for family, especially not for family. I was beginning to understand the truth of those words. 2 months passed after the slap incident. 2 months of limited contact with my family, of focusing on my own well-being, of learning to prioritize myself without guilt. The change wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I had started seeing a therapist regularly, not Diane, but someone she had recommended who specialized in family dynamics. Dr. Loretta helped me recognize patterns I hadn't even been aware of, the ways I had internalized my family's view of me as less deserving, less important. We worked on setting boundaries, on identifying my own needs, and valuing them as legitimate. Healing doesn't mean forgetting, Dr. Loretta told me during one session. It means learning to hold the truth of your experience without letting it define you. My relationship with Michael deepened during this time. He had been unfailingly supportive, never pushing me to reconcile with my family for the sake of peace, but also not demonizing them entirely. People are complicated, he would say. Your parents and Kate can be both the people who hurt you and people who are capable of change. Whether they were capable of change remained to be seen. My father had made several attempts to reach out. Tentative text messages asking how I was doing, a voicemail suggesting we meet for coffee, just the two of us. My mother's communication was less frequent and more defensive, still framing the incident as my fault, while suggesting we move past it for the family's sake. Kate had cycled through various approaches: anger, guilt-tripping, acting as if nothing had happened, and most recently a kind of grudging acknowledgement that perhaps things had gone too far. "I never meant for Mom to slap you," she texted 3 weeks after the incident. That was totally out of line. It was the closest thing to an apology I had received from any of them, and while it didn't address the underlying issues, it felt like a tiny crack in the facade. I had responded to my father's messages with brief but not unfriendly updates, letting him know I was well, but not ready for in-person meetings yet. To Kate's quasi-apology, I had simply said, "Thank you for acknowledging that. I'm still processing everything that happened, not just that day, but over many years." To my mother, I had not responded at all. The slap had crossed a line that mere text messages couldn't address. Finally, after much thought and discussion with Dr. Loretta, I agreed to meet my father for lunch at a neutral location, a cafe halfway between my apartment and his office. When I arrived, he was already there, looking older and more tired than I remembered. "Emma," he said, standing to greet me with an awkward half-hug. "Thank you for coming." We ordered, making small talk about the weather and a local sports team until our food arrived. Then my father cleared his throat and looked at me directly. "I owe you an apology," he said, surprising me with his directness. Not just for what happened that day, but for years of not seeing what was happening in our family. I waited, giving him space to continue. "Your mother has always had a special bond with Kate," he said, choosing his words carefully. "They're similar in so many ways. And I think I let that relationship overshadow everything else. I told myself it was natural that you were more independent and didn't need as much attention. But that wasn't fair to you." "No," I agreed quietly. "It wasn't. When your mother," he hesitated, "when she slapped you, I should have intervened immediately. I should have stood up for you. I didn't, and I'm deeply ashamed of that." His admission was unexpected and touching. "Why didn't you?" I asked, not accusingly, but genuinely wanting to understand. My father looked down at his plate. "Fear," he admitted. "Not physical fear, but I've spent 30 years avoiding your mother's disapproval." It's easier to go along to keep the peace. I told myself I was being a good husband, a good father by not causing conflict, but really, I was just being a coward. His honesty moved me. I appreciate you saying that, Dad. Your mother is having a harder time seeing her role in all this, he continued. She still believes she was justified that you provoked her. I'm working on helping her understand, but it's a process. I nodded, not surprised. And Kate. Kate is confused, he said. She's never had to consider that her place in the family might come at someone else's expense. That's our fault. Mine and your mother's. We created this dynamic, and you both have had to live with the consequences. We talked for nearly 2 hours, covering ground we had never explored before. For the first time, my father seemed to really see me, not as the self-sufficient daughter who needed less, but as someone who had been hurt by the family's unspoken hierarchy. When we parted, he hugged me properly. I love you, Emma. I'm sorry it took something so dramatic for me to start seeing clearly. I love you too, Dad, I said, and meant it. A week later, I received an email from my mother. It wasn't exactly an apology. She still maintained that I had provoked the situation with my attitude, but it was an acknowledgement that things went too far, and a suggestion that we work toward healing as a family. It wasn't enough, but it was something. I responded that I would consider family therapy if she was genuinely interested in addressing the long-standing patterns, not just the single incident of the slap. She hadn't replied yet. Kate and I had exchanged a few more texts, cautious but not hostile. She had recently started a part-time job at a marketing firm, her first steady employment since college, and seemed somewhat humbled by the experience of answering to a boss and adhering to a schedule. It's actually kind of nice to know exactly what's expected, she wrote, which felt like a small but significant shift in her perspective. The approaching holiday season brought new challenges. Traditionally, we had always gathered at my parents' house for Thanksgiving and Christmas. This year I had decided to spend Thanksgiving with Michael's family, a warm, boisterous group who welcomed me without reservation, and Christmas with a group of friends who were also avoiding complicated family situations. My decision had been met with dismay from my parents and outrage from Kate, who accused me of breaking up the family. But I held firm, explaining that I needed more time and space before resuming holiday traditions. This isn't punishment, I told my father during a phone call. It's self-care. I'm not ready to pretend everything is normal when it isn't. Surprisingly, he understood. Take the time you need, Emma. We'll be here when you're ready. As Thanksgiving approached, I found myself feeling lighter than I had in years at the prospect of a holiday. Michael's family was easy to be around. They teased each other affectionately, disagreed openly without lasting rancor, and seemed genuinely interested in each other's lives. Being with them showed me what family could be at its best. You seem happier, Michael observed as we drove home from his parents' house, leftovers packed in containers on the back seat. More, I don't know, present. I am, I realized. For the first time in my life, I'm not bracing for the next slight or trying to make myself smaller to keep the peace. It's exhausting to live that way, and I didn't even realize how exhausting until I stopped. The journey wasn't over, of course. Family dynamics built over decades don't change overnight. There would be more difficult conversations, more boundaries to establish, and defend more work to do in therapy. My relationship with my mother might never fully heal, and Kate and I might never be the close sisters that some part of me had always longed for. But something fundamental had shifted. I had found my voice, my worth. I had learned that loving my family didn't mean accepting mistreatment, that setting boundaries wasn't selfish but necessary. The slap that had stung my cheek that day had also ironically woken me up. It had made visible what had been happening invisibly for years. And in that painful awakening, I had found a new kind of freedom. The freedom to choose my own path, to define family on my own terms, to require respect as a condition of relationship. It wasn't the path I would have chosen. But standing here now, I wouldn't go back. Some lessons, it seems, can only be learned the hard way. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who didn't treat you with respect? How did you handle it, and what did you learn from the experience? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might be struggling with similar family dynamics. Remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's essential for your well-being. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you strength and clarity on your own journey toward healthier relationships.